Hi everybody, welcome to Live Blogger. In this tutorial series, we are creating a custom drop-down using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. So this is how it looks. We can see that we have this drop-down over here. And if I click on this, we have all the options displayed over here. And we can select any of these options. So if I select, for example, this option right here, we can see that the selected option is displayed in here. Now you can go ahead and search for any currency you want over here. So for example, if I just type S, then all the currencies with S are displayed over here. So if I type SD, we can see that all the currencies with SD are displayed over here, and you can select any of these. And you can also click outside this input box to hide the options. Now in the previous video, we saw how to design this using HTML and CSS. Now in this video, we will start adding the functionality. So let's get started. Right, here's our source code, and the first thing we will do is we will remove all these options from here, and we'll generate these options using JavaScript. So I'll just delete all of these, and I'll just keep one of these for taking a look at the structure of our options. So I'll just select this and I'll just comment it. So you can just press command / to comment the code. Right now if we go back here, we can see that we don't have any changes because the options are not displayed in the beginning. Now if you go to style.css file, here we can see that for the options, we are adding a class called active to display it. So if you go back and if I just uncomment this, now if you go over here to options and if I add a class of active, we can see that the options are displayed over here. All right, let's go ahead and comment this again. And we will generate this HTML structure using JavaScript. So let's go ahead and delete this active class. Right now here I have created this currency code to the country code mapping. So here we have all these values over here. So USD is set to US and CAD is set to CA. So all these values are set to the country codes. Now we are doing this over here because we are going to use an API to fetch the flag. So if you go back, here we can see that the flag of all the countries are displayed over here on the left side. Now we're going to get this flag using the country code. But for these currencies, we're going to use a different API, and in that we don't have the country code, and then we also don't have the flag. So we need to use these two different APIs. So that's why I have created this mapping for currency to country code. Now let's go ahead and create a function called init. And in this, let's go ahead and add a try catch block. And here in the catch, let's go ahead and type console.log error. And here in try, let's go ahead and type const res equals await fetch, and here we're going to enter the URL over here, and it is going to be http www.floatrates.com/daily/usd.json, and let's change this function into an async function because we are using await over here. Now this will give us the data of all the currencies relative to the USD. Right now let's go ahead and get the data. So let's type const data equals await res.json. Now this will store the JSON data inside this data constant. Right now let's go ahead and check if the result is okay, and I'll just go ahead and console.log the data over here, and let's go back and let's go to our website, and let's go to the console, and let's go ahead and call this function. So let's type init, and here we can see that the data is being displayed. We have all the currencies and their details displayed over here. So we have all these details over here. Now we're going to use this data and create this drop down. So we need to have this code, and then we need to have this name. So we need these two values. We need to have the code and the name. So let's go back and let's create a function called create option, and in that we will pass the details that we need. Now the first thing we will do is we will store the data of USD, because by default this list doesn't have the USD because all these currencies are relative to the USD. So here let's pass the currency code as the first argument, and for the second argument let's pass the name, which is US dollar, and then we will pass the ID of the drop down. So I'll just call it from, and now let's go ahead and loop through all the currency code. So here we can see that we are getting these currency codes over here. So let's type for const currency code in data, And now let's go ahead and get the info of the currency code. So let's type const currency info equals data currency code, and let's extract the code and the name. So let's type const code name equals currency info. So we are getting the data from here. So we have the code and the name. So we are extracting them from the currency info. Right now let's go ahead and pass these options to the create option function. So let's type create option, and let's pass the code, the name, and the ID. So I'll just call it from. So if you go back over here, we have this drop down container, and here let's give it an ID of from. Right now let's go back and let's create this create option function. So let's type const create option, and here we need to get the code, the name, and the ID. And let's create an arrow function over here. And here first of all let's check whether the ID is available. So if you don't have the ID, then we'll just return. Right now let's go ahead and select the correct dropdown based on the ID. So let's type const dropdown equals document.querySelector, and here let's type backticks hash $ curly braces ID. So we will search for the ID, and we will store that as the dropdown over here. Right now if we go back and if we type console.log dropdown, here we can see that the dropdown is being returned. So now let's go ahead and create the structure of our dropdown. So let's go back to the index.html file, and here in the dropdown we have the options division, and in that we have this division with a class of option. So let's create a division with a class of option. So just type const option equals document.createElement div, and let's give it a class of option. So let's type option.classList.add option, and in there we need to create this division with the class of flag. So let's create that. I'll just type const and let's call it flag div equals document.createElement div, and let's give it a class of flag. So let's type flag div.classList.add flag, and then we need to have this division which has the currency text. So for that let's create a division. So let's type const currency div equals document.createElement div, and for this div we don't have any classes. Now here inside this flag we need to create this img tag, and we need to get the flag and we need to add it to the source. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a different function for creating this flag based on this country ID. So let's go ahead and create a function, and let's call it create flag image, and we will get the currency code over here, and we will convert the currency code into the country code using this object, and then we will call this API and we will get the flag. So let's go ahead and type const country code equals, and we can simply type the name of this object, which is currency to country. Let's type currency to country, and here we can add the currency code. Right now let's create an img tag. So let's type const img equals document.createElement, and let's create an img tag, and here we need to add the source of the flag. So first of all let's check whether the country code is available. So if you scroll up, here we can see that for some of these values we don't have the country code. So let's go ahead and check whether the country code is blank, and if it is blank then we'll just set the image source to a placeholder image. So here I have this images folder, and in that we have this placeholder file. So it is just a white image, so it is called flag placeholder.png. So here let's type images /flag placeholder.png, and if we have the image, then let's go ahead and type image.source equals, and here we need to call this API. So let's copy this and let's paste it over here, and here instead of US we need to add the country code that we get over here. So let's type $ curly braces, and here let's type country code. Now for the image let's go ahead and give it a class. So let's type classList.add, and let's give it a class of flag icon, and lastly we'll go ahead and return the image. So let's type return img. So now when we call this function using this currency code, we will get the image with that country flag returned. So here in our create option function, let's call the function, So here let's go ahead and type flag image equals create flag image, and let's pass the code. So let's type code, and this will store the image inside this flag image. And now let's go ahead and add this flag image to this flag div, because here we can see inside this flag division we have the image. So let's type flag div dot append child, and here let's type flag image. Now in this currency div we need to add this text. So we need to get the code and the name. So let's create it inside a const, and let's name it currency text equals, let's type $symbol curly braces code, and then we need to add a hyphen, and then let's type $symbol curly braces name, and here let's go ahead and type currency div dot text content, and let's set it to currency text. Alright, now we need to add this flag div and this currency div to this option. So here we can see inside the option we have these two elements. So let's type option, which we have created over here, dot append child, and here let's type flag div, and then let's type option dot append child currency div, and then we need to add this option to the drop down. So here we can see we have this drop down, and in that we have the options division. So we need to add this option division to this options division. So let's select this. So here let's type const options equals dropdown dot query selector. Now this will only search for the elements inside the current dropdown with this ID. So here let's go ahead and type dot options, and let's go ahead and add the option to the options. So let's type options dot append child option. Right now let's go back to our website, and let's go to elements, and if we open the drop down and if we go to options, we can see that all the options are added over here. Let's go ahead and set the class to active so that we can see it. So here for the options, let's add a class of active, and here we can see that all the currencies and the flags are displayed over here. Right now let's go ahead and add an event listener to this input field. So when we click on the input field, we want these options to be displayed. So let's do that. Let's go back over here, and let's go to the main.js file, and let's go ahead and create a function called add event listeners, and here we will pass the ID of the dropdown. Now here the first thing we will do is we will reference the dropdown. So let's type const dropdown equals document.querySelector and backticks hash $symbol curly braces, and here let's type ID. So this will reference the dropdown with the specified ID. Right now we need to reference this input field. So for that we have this input tag over here. Let's also give it a class. So let's type class, and let's set the class to currency input, and let's reference this over here. So let's type const currency input equals dropdown, and make sure to add dropdown instead of document, because we need to select only the currency input inside the specified dropdown with this ID. So let's type dropdown.querySelector, and here let's type currency input, and we also need to reference this img tag, and it has a class of input flag. So let's type const input flag equals dropdown.querySelector input flag, and then we need to select the options division, which is this division right here. So for now I'll just remove the active class. Right now let's reference this options division. So here let's type const options equals dropdown.querySelector options. Right now let's go ahead and add an event listener to this currency input. So when we click on the currency input, the first thing we will do is we will remove the flag. So let's go ahead and type currency input dot add event listener, and let's listen for the click event, and let's create an arrow function. And first of all let's type input flag dot style dot display, and let's set it to none. So now when we click on the input field, the flag should disappear. And the next thing we need to do is we need to remove the text inside the input field. So right now it is set to USD US dollar, but if I click on that, all the text is hidden. So here let's type currency input dot value equals blank, And the next thing we need to do is we need to remove the padding on the left side. So right now the padding is set to, if you go to the currency input, here we can see that the padding left is set to 48 pixels. So here let's type currency input dot style dot padding left, and let's set it to 16 pixels. And then we need to add the active class to the options. So let's tap options dot class list dot add active. Right now let's go ahead and call this function add event listeners, and we'll call that function over here. So here outside this for, let's go ahead and call the function, and here we need to pass the ID. So we have an ID of from, so let's pass that over here. And now let's go back, and now let's click on this input field, and here we can see that the functionality is working alright. Now when we click on one of these options should disappear and the values should be displayed over here. So let's do that. Now here in the create option function, let's add an event listener to the options. So here we can see we have the option. So let's tap option dot add event listener, and let's listen for the click event, and let's create an arrow function. Here let's go ahead and type options, and we need to remove the active class. So let's tap class list dot remove active. And now if you go back, right now let's click on this input field, and we have the options displayed. And if I click on one of these options, the options disappear. Now when we click on any of these options, we need to add that value over here to the input field. So for that we'll create a function, and we'll call the function set input values, and we will pass the currency text, and then we will pass the flag image, and then let's pass the code, which is the currency code, and also the ID of the dropdown. Let's pass the flag image source. So let's have flag image.src. Here we are sending the currency text which we are creating over here, and then we are sending the flag image source which we are getting from this create flag image function, and then we are sending the currency code and the ID. So now let's create this set input values function. So let's tab const set input values, and let's go ahead and get the currency, the flag, the code, and the ID. And first of all, let's go ahead and type const dropdown equals document.querySelector, and here let's type hash $ curly braces ID, and then let's go ahead and select the currency input, which is this input field inside the dropdown. So let's type const currency input equals dropdown dot query selector currency input, and then we need to get the input flag. So let's type const input flag equals dropdown dot query selector input flag, and then let's go ahead and set the currency input dot value to the currency that we get to this function, and then let's type input flag dot src equals the flag source that we get over here. So let's type flag, and if you scroll down here we can see that we are setting the style display to none. So here we need to type input flag dot style dot display, and we need to set it to block. And if you scroll down here we can see that we are changing the padding left. So let's go ahead and select that, and let's paste it over here. So we will reset the padding to 48 pixels, and let's go ahead and store the code to a data attribute. So for that you can just type currency input dot dataset dot, and let's call it selected currency code, and let's set it equal to code. Right now let's go back and let's click on this input field, and let's select one of these options. So let's select this option right here, and we can see that the option is displayed over here in this input field. So every time we select an option, that option is displayed over here. And if you go over here to the element, and if you go to the input, here we can see in the input we have all these values, and we also have the data attribute called selected currency code, and it is set to the correct code. So if we, for example, select USD, we can see that it is set to USD. So everything is working all right till now. Right now let's go ahead and create one more dropdown. So let's go back and let's go to the HTML file, and let's copy this dropdown, and let's paste it down here. So here we have the second drop down, and for the second one, let's go ahead and give it an ID of 2. And now let's go back to the JavaScript file, and here let's make some changes. And here in this init function, here we are calling this create option function. So let's call it one more time for the 2 drop down. So here instead of from, let's add 2 as the ID, and here let's duplicate this, and here let's add 2 for the ID, and here for the add event listeners as well, let's type add event listeners, and here let's type 2. Right now let's go back to our website, and let's click on this input field, and we have the options displayed over here. And let's click on this input field, and here also we have the options displayed. Now here we can see that the options are displayed behind the other input field. So let's add a z index over here in the styles.css file. So let's go to the options, and here for the options, let's go ahead and set a background color, and let's set it to white. And let's also add a z index of, let's try 30. And now we can see it looks alright. So we can select any of these currencies and they'll be displayed over here. Alright, so that's basically it for this video. In the next video, we will continue adding the functionality. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to add the functionality of searching. So if I search for any of these currency codes or currency name, they should be displayed over here. So we will do that and the rest of the functionality in the next video. Alright, so that's basically it for this video. If you have any doubts, you can ask in the comments below. And if you like this video, please click on the like button and subscribe to this channel to get the latest video updates. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a nice day.